Come out into the garden of stories and songs. Sing a tale, tell a story, draw a picture of what's been told. Imagine along, imagine along, imagine along.
You're entering a very special garden, a garden where stories, songs, and poems grow in all shapes and forms. To enter, all you need is your imagination. Come, enter the garden now. Hello, I'm Mary Ellen Monroe, welcoming you to listen to the story of Harriet Tubman. Born in 1820 on a plantation in Maryland, Harriet Tubman and her family were slaves, and their master could work them or sell them as he pleased. What made Harriet different from most was that she asked questions. Why should this man be able to control her freedom? Harriet believed that she had the right to go free or die. Almeta Whitis, author, storyteller, and multi-talented performer, who lives in Rochester, New York, tells in her words the very real story of Harriet Tubman's struggle for freedom, for herself, and for all people.
Behold, the hand of the Lord is not shortened, that it cannot save, nor his ear heavy, that it cannot hear. To loose the bonds of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that you break every yoke. Feed the hungry, clothe the naked, shelter the homeless, and hide not yourself from your own flesh. Then shall your light break forth as the dawn, your health spring out speedily, your righteousness go before you, and the glory of the Lord shall be your reward. Nobody but you, Lord. Nobody but you. When I was little, me and David Clark, we spent our whole day long just playing on the plantation, having ourselves a good old time. But David Clark, he began to grow bigger and stronger in his body and on the inside. He began to grow too. He was yearning for freedom. I could see it in his eyes, you know, that look, that he wanted to run for freedom. Well, one day, I was helping my mama over in the big house, and I look out the front window when who I see walking down the front walk but David Clark, heading for the road. That fool, where he think he going? You can't run for freedom in the daylight. So I hiked up my skirts and I went running down the walk after him. But the overseer, he got there first. He was a mean little ugly man with his face all twisted up with evil and hatred. And he came up behind David and he said, "Where you think you going, boy?" David Clark, he didn't stop, he didn't look, he didn't say nothing. He just kept right on walking. And that overseer took out that great big black whip he always carried, and he cracked it in the air. And he said, "I say, where you think you going, boy?" And David Clark stopped, but he didn't turn around, and he didn't say nothing. And that overseer, he walked around to the front of David Clark and he stuck his face up at him and he said, "You're thinking about running, boy? You're thinking about running? Well, you better get that notion out your head right now and get your black behind back to them fields and do the work you supposed to be doing now. You get?" Now, David Clark was a lot bigger and a lot stronger, and all he had to do was just ball up his fist and whop him one time and knock him right out. But David didn't do nothing or say nothing. He just turned around and started walking back for the field. And he passed me, and I was standing under the big tree, and he smiled at me, and he say, "Mindy, now my name is Harriet, but they calls me Mindy." He say, "Mindy, no star look pretty bright tonight, don't you think?" He's still thinking about running. Well, later on that day, my mama O'Rick, she wanted me to go to the general store in town and buy her some chawing tobacco. So I started walking down the road, and who did I see walking down the road in front of me but that fool David Clark? He trying to run twice in one day? So I hike up my skirts and I start walking down the road after him real fast. I didn't run because any slave saw running was simply asking for trouble. But David Clark had great long legs, and he got to town long before I did, but I could see he was going in the general store too, so I came in after him, and I looked around, and I didn't see him nowhere. Oh, yeah, there he is. He over there by them ladies' dresses. And just then I saw the overseer, and he come in, and he started looking around, and then these two white ladies, they started arguing over some calico material. And then the overseer, he saw David Clark, and David Clark, he saw the overseer, and David Clark lit out for the door, and the overseer said, "Stop, boy, stop. You stop right now. Gal, stop that boy. You big enough, you strong enough. You stop him now, hold him." But David Clark kept right on running, and I couldn't do nothing. All I could do was just stand there and say, "Please don't hurt him. Don't hurt David. He don't mean no harm. Please don't hurt him." But the overseer, he reached over next to that calico material and he grabbed one of them brass weights and he threw it in the air after David Clark, but it didn't hit David Clark. It hit me right in my head. And I fell over backwards with this great hole in my head and blood just gushing out, and the overseer stepped right over me and kept running down the road after David Clark. Harriet lay for many days, unconscious, near death. The master came and looked at her and then started bringing in people to sell her, trying to get his last bit of money before she died. But his wife, she was a kinder person, and she would send down warm blankets and hot broth from the big house, and sometimes she would even sit with Harriet. And no, Harriet Tubman did not die. She lived. She had a great scar in her head that she had for the rest of her life. And she was different. She wasn't as lively and happy as she used to be, and there would be times when she would be talking to you and she would fall right into a deep sleep. And then she'd wake up a few minutes, a few hours later, and keep right on talking, as though it never even happened. Now, most of the time, Harriet never remembered these deep sleeps, but one time, when she was in her cabin all by herself, everybody else was down by the fire talking about the news of the day, and she felt herself begin to go into one of these deep sleeps. But part of her remained awake. Part of her remained aware, conscious of what was going on. And she began to sense a presence in the room. And she began to see this great, beautiful light fill the room brighter than the sun, and she began to feel something moving around deep down inside of her, and it moved up and it filled her heart with joy, and it moved up and it filled her head with peace. And then Harriet knew what she had to do. Harriet reached over and she picked up her shawl and she wrapped it around her shoulders. Harriet walked out of the cabin. Harriet walked down to where all the other slaves were. And she was singing in her rich, deep bass voice. And the people said, "Here come Minnie, y'all. Here come Minnie." And she was singing the forbidden song. When Israel was in Egypt land, let my people go. Oppressed so hard they could not stand. Let my people go. Then go down Moses, away down in Egypt land, till old Pharaoh let my people go. When Harriet got back to the cabin, her mother and her father were furious with her. "Baby, why you do this thing? Why you do this thing? You going out there singing that forbidden song like that. Now you know that God done delivered you from that head wound. And now you come out there knowing that any slave caught singing that song could immediately be put to death. Baby, why you want to do this to us? We love you, baby. We only want the best for you. Why you want to do this to us?" "I just had to do it, Mama. Don't you see? I couldn't help but think about the Bible story about the children in Egypt and how Moses led them out of bondage and into the promised land. And Mama, I couldn't help but think that somebody had to do that for our people. And I just felt that it had to be me. Freedom cannot be granted or even earned. A price must be paid when a demand is made upon it. And freedom is wanting good for your brothers and your sisters, as well as yourself. And don't assume that every colored man or woman is your brother and sister, and don't believe that every white man or woman is your enemy. Because I'm here to tell you that if it wasn't for the Quakers, the Society of Friends, white people, I wouldn't be standing here before you today. Why, it was people like Thomas Garrett, a Quaker, a white man, who spent his whole life and all of his money not just criticizing slavery, but working hard to get us free. While one time when Thomas Garrett was fined by the judge for helping the fugitives, the judge asked him, did he have anything he wanted to say? And Thomas Garrett said, "Yes, I do, Judge. Now, you have left me without even $1, and you have warned me. And I have only this to say. If anybody knows of a fugitive in need of shelter and a friend, send them to me, Thomas Garrett. I'll never turn them out." Now, it was Thomas Garrett who introduced me to Mr. William Stills, the secretary on the Underground Railroad in charge of conductors. Now, it took me a long time to see Mr. Stills and an even longer time to convince him that I could be a conductor on the Underground Railroad. Because you see, Mr. Stills, he didn't like that idea, you know. Women conductors. Nobody knew the land like me, man or woman. When I was little, my mama, old Rich, she wanted me to work in the big house with her where the work was light and easy. But I like being out of doors with my daddy Ben. My daddy Ben, he knew land better than any man, colored or white. And he knew how to read the animal signs and the weather, and he taught me how to find my way at night just by using the stars so I never get lost. And my daddy Ben taught me something else, real special. He taught me how to stand real still so a rabbit could hop right up next to me and eat and never even know I was there. Came in handy when them slave catchers were after me. Well, I just kept on working and believing, 'cause I knew that I could be a conductor on the Underground Railroad. And I still believe today that it was God who changed Mr. Still's mind and created that situation where he had to use me to bring out my first trainload of passengers. And that included my sister Mary Ann and her 2 little children. Yeah, at first, just getting them up to the northern states was enough, but after they passed the Fugitive Slave Act, I had to run my passengers clear up to Canada. I'll never forget that password, a friend with friends. Yeah. 19 trips and over 300 people. And I never once lost a passenger or ran my train off the track. And I'm here to tell you today, children, that we still in bondage. Mental and spiritual chains instead of physical ones, but bondage is bondage, no matter what its chains. And we must replace this idea that freedom is something owed to us by man. It is not. It is a gift from God, and we can never be free unless we're free in our minds first. And right now, our minds seem to be crowded with the worries and cares of today. If we do not get this message, I am afraid that one day it will be too late for us as a people. For we must look for thoughts and things and people that build us up, not tear us down. And the ruin of the downfall of the nation begins in the homes of its people. Where there is no shame, there can be no honor. Know yourselves, for that knowledge is like the garden, and it must be cultivated in order to be harvested. I've been at this a long time, children, and I'm not tired, so don't you get tired. I don't feel no waste time. I've come too far from where I started from, and nobody told me that my road would be easy. I don't believe He brought me this far to leave me. God bless you, children.
After the Civil War, Harriet lived in Auburn, New York, where she continued to devote her life to the needs of others. Harriet Tubman died in Auburn in 1913. The story of Moses gave Harriet courage to keep going in difficult times. The plight of the Israelites in ancient Egypt was similar in ways to Harriet and her people's situation in the United States. Oppression has been with us since the beginning of time. Moses was a freedom fighter. He inspired me to write this story. It is a gentle, dry wind that blows across the evening desert. The sweet fragrance of air as smooth fingers caress my face. One marvels at the beauty of this place between mountains and sea. I am seated cross-legged in soft sand with bright burning stars overhead in the midst of an encampment with thousands of people just set free from hundreds of years of bondage in the land of Egypt. Weary, yet triumphant, they now are recalling the events of the day, which have been, to say the least, awesome. How can I describe the moment when the leader, in his woven brown and red striped robes, blowing in the wind, climbed on top of a mighty rock, stretched out his staff over the waters, and ordered them to part? Time held its breath. The power surged. It moved like a great wind to hold back the deep sea, building heavy walls to a strong fortress. The man's eyes burned like two blue stars on fire. He was the important player in the action going on, yet aware that he had said yes to transmitting the energy that was beyond him. This was proven when all the Israelites had walked through the sea on dry ground. There was a pillar of cloud and fire that stood between the Pharaoh's army and the children of Abraham until all the chosen ones were safe. Then the pillar departed, allowing the obstinate army to drive between the walls of water, believing that they too would have safe passage. As great as the power manifest had moved to control the sea waters, more quickly did the force and action take place by which the water's walls fell. We who had just passed through felt fear flash and tremendous gratefulness sweep over us as we witnessed a great and powerful army destroyed in minutes. The sound of men in last moments of anguish, confused horses neighing for not to be given master's care, the rush of waters, the wind, the silence. The sun colored to a morning red. Not one Egyptian was left alive that day. When we saw the great power which the Lord had put forth against Egypt, all the people feared the Lord, and we put our faith in Moses, his servant. Feel the dry wind that blows across this evening's desert. The night sky reflects the glow of the encampment's fire. Jubilant voices sing songs of freedom. I marvel at the beauty of this place between mountains and sea. Who will tell me that I was not there? My thoughts, feelings, and memories come from this desert place. The story of Moses is written in a book many people have read for hundreds and hundreds of years. The story was probably told to them as it was to me before ever reading it. Some people say that this is a true story. Others say it has been made up. Like any story, no one can make you believe it. Somehow believing that the story is true may not be what is important. Maybe what is important is how the story makes you feel and what you think about the pictures from the story created in your mind. I know that Moses is alive for me. He has been my friend for many years. I've learned to trust in him and what happened when the Red Sea parted. There are many memories I have from what we call our real-life experiences, yet it would be difficult to prove that any one of those events took place. Then, what happens to stop the questions, the doubt? What allows us to move out on life, not really knowing what will happen? Maybe you believe my stories because of a feeling that is comfortable and warm, a feeling of trust and faith, and our friendship grows. How much of our lives is more of what we can't prove, but is some unseen emotion or feeling that we may never even put words to? As the story of Moses unfolds, we meet a Hebrew raised as a prince of Egypt. He did not question his identity until it was revealed to him. Moses, you are not a prince of Egypt. You were saved by the Pharaoh's daughter, raised from the waters of the Nile. You are a Hebrew slave, an Israelite. Moses was sent out into the desert and became a simple shepherd with wife and child. Then God asked Moses to let my people go. Who am I, Lord, to accomplish this great feat? You can imagine how Moses must have felt. He wondered why, like we would do, why he had been asked to go to the great and powerful Pharaoh. The Lord asked Moses to have faith and to trust in his story. Moses did, and their friendship grew. When I have difficult tasks in my life to achieve, I think about Moses. I see him walking into the worldly opulence of the king of Egypt's court, not too sure of himself, and in his mind still wondering why he is there. Dressed in his homespuns, with his scepter, a plain, hand-carved wooden staff, Moses pronounces an order from a king that no one can see. Let my people go. The words that Moses courageously spoke in faith in front of many who laughed at him are still ringing out into this century. I think of Moses in difficult times. I figured out a long time ago that it didn't matter if I could prove anything. How you feel inside, how you make other people feel is important. A positive attitude is important. Moses figured it out. Believe me, it was an experience to remember, to have been right there with Moses when the waters parted. The morning wind breathes gently as it moves across the desert. I am held in awe by the beauty of this place between mountains and sea. I am seated cross-legged in soft sand with the brilliant star of this new day rising. There is a feeling of joy, of celebration in the midst of the thousands of people just set free from years of slavery in the land of. For Out into the Garden, a series of stories, music, and poems, I'm Mary Ellen Monroe. Out into the Garden is a production of Aura Publications Incorporated. Music composed, arranged, and performed by Dennis, Mary Ellen, Nicholas, and Mary Catherine Monroe. Engineered by Steve Forney, recorded at Dejalon Studios, Rochester, New York.